As luck would have it, they didn't have much farther to go. Where the master lived, on Newton Avenue, was only a mile or so from the city dump. They reached his apartment building early in the morning before a single milk truck had appeared on the street. "You see," said the toaster cheerfully, "in the end, everything really does work out for the best." Alas, the toaster had spoken too soon. Their tribulations were not yet at an end, and not everything would work out for the best, as they were shortly to discover. The Hoover, which had an instinctive knack for such things, buzzed the street door open and summoned the automatic elevator. When the elevator door slid open, it wheeled the buggy in and pressed the button for the 14th floor.
"It's changed so,"
said the Tenzer lamp, as the Hoover pushed the buggy out of the elevator and down the corridor.
"The wallpaper used to have green squiggles and white blobs, and now it's crisscross lines."
"It's we who've changed," said the blanket miserably.
"Hush,"
said the Hoover sternly.
"Remember the rules."
It pressed the doorbell beside the door to the master's apartment. All the appliances kept perfectly still. No one came to the door.
"Maybe he's asleep,"
said the alarm clock radio.
"Maybe he's not home,"
said the Hoover.
"I'll see."
It rang the doorbell, but in a different way so that only the appliances in the apartment would be able to hear it ring. In only a moment, a Singer sewing machine answered the door. "Yes," said the sewing machine in a tone of polite curiosity. "Can I help you?"
"Oh, excuse me, I seem to have made a mistake."
The Hoover looked at the number on the door, then at the name on the brass panel over the bell. It was the right number, the right name, but a sewing machine?
"Is that?"
said a familiar voice within the apartment.
"Why, it is! It's the old Hoover! How are you? Come in, come in!"
The Hoover wheeled the buggy into the apartment and over the deep-piled carpet toward the friendly old TV. The blanket peeked out shyly over the side of the buggy.
"Oh, and who's that with you? Come out, don't be shy. My goodness, what a treat this is."
The blanket crawled out of the buggy, taking care to keep the worst effects of the journey folded up out of sight. It was followed by the radio, the lamp, and last of all, the toaster. The TV, which knew all five of them from the time it had spent with the master at the summer cottage, introduced them to the many appliances from all over the apartment, which had begun to gather in the living room. Some, like the water pick, the blender, and the TV itself, were old friends. Some, like the stereo, the clock, and the mantel, were known to the four appliances that had lived in the apartment at one time themselves, but not to the toaster. But a great many were complete strangers to them all. They were huge, impractical ginger jar lamps squatting in low tables, and out of the bedroom dim little lamps with frilly shades, and other lamps screwed into the dining nook wall that were pretending to be candle flames. All of the kitchen had trooped a whole tribe of unfamiliar gadgets. A crock-pot, a can opener, a waffle iron, a meat grinder, a carving knife, and somewhat abashedly the master's new toaster.
"How do you do?"
said the new toaster in a barely audible voice when the TV introduced it. "How do you do?" the toaster replied warmly. Neither could think of anything else to say. Fortunately, there were more introductions to be effected. The Hoover had to go through a similar ordeal when it met the apartment's vacuum cleaner, which was, just as the Hoover had feared, one of the new lightweight models that looks a lot like a big hamburger bun on wheels. They were polite to each other, but it was obvious that the new vacuum looked on the Hoover as outmoded. The blanket had an even worse shock in store. The last two appliances to appear in the living room were a vaporizer and a long, tangled string of Christmas tree lights, both of which had been hibernating in a closet. The blanket looked about anxiously. "Well," it said, making a determined effort to seem accepting and friendly, "I think there must still be one more of you we haven't met yet."
"No,"
said the TV.
"We're all here."
"But is there no other blanket?" The TV avoided the blanket's earnest gaze.
"No, the master doesn't use an electric blanket anymore. Just a plain wool one."
"But he always... The blanket could say no more. Its resolution deserted it and fell in a heap on the carpet. A gasp went up from the apartment's assembled appliances, which until now had no idea of the extent of the blanket's injuries. "Doesn't use an electric blanket," the toaster repeated indignantly. "Why ever not?" The screen of the TV flickered and then, evasively, started showing a gardening show. "It isn't the master's choice, really," said the Singer sewing machine in his funny clipped accent. "I dare say he would be delighted to see his old blanket again." The blanket looked up questioningly. "It's the mistress," the sewing machine went on. "She says she becomes too hot under an electric blanket."
The mistress?
the 5 appliances repeated. Didn't you know? No, said the toaster. No, we haven't heard anything from the master since he left the cottage 3 years ago.
2 years, 11 months, and 22 days to be precise,
said the alarm clock radio. That's why we determined to find our way here. We feared, I don't know what exactly, but we thought that our master would need us. Oh, said the sewing machine. It turned to watch the gardening show on the TV. As unobtrusively as it might, the new toaster crept back into the kitchen and resumed its post of duty on the Formica countertop.
2 years, 11 months, and 22 days is a long time to be left alone,
the radio asserted at a rather loud volume.
Naturally, we became concerned. The poor air conditioner stopped working altogether. And all the while,
said the lamp,
never a word of explanation.
It glared reproachfully at the TV, which continued to discuss the problem of blister beetles. Can't any of you tell us why? The toaster demanded earnestly. Why did he never return to the cottage? There must be a reason.
I can tell you,
said the vaporizer, inching forward.
You see, the mistress is subject to hay fever. I can help her a bit with her asthma, but when hay fever starts in on her, there's nothing anyone can do, and she really is very miserable then.
I still don't understand, said the toaster. The sewing machine spelled it out. Rather than go to the country, where there is bound to be ragweed and pollen and such, they spend their summers at the seaside. And our cottage, our lovely cottage in the woods, what is to become of it? I believe the master means to sell it. And us? The toaster asked. I understand there is to be an auction, said the sewing machine. The Hoover, which had comported itself with great dignity throughout the visit, could bear no more. With a loud groan, it grasped the handle of the buggy as though to steady itself.
Come.
It gasped.
All of you come. We are not wanted here. We'll return to...
Where would they return? Where could they? They had become appliances without a household. To the dump, shrieked the blanket hysterically. Isn't that where junk belongs? That's all we are now. Junk. It twisted its cord into an agonized knot. Isn't that what the pirate said we were? Junk, 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 all of us. And me most of all. Control yourself, said the toaster sternly, though its own coils felt as though they were about to snap. We're not junk. We're sturdy, useful appliances. Look at me, cried the blanket, displaying the full extent of its worst tear. And these mud stains, look. Your tears can be sewn up, said the toaster calmly. It turned to the sewing machine. Can't they? The sewing machine nodded in mute agreement. And the stains can be cleaned.
And then what?
The Hoover demanded dourly.
Let us suppose the blanket is repaired and cleaned, and that I've mended my corn, got my dust bag into working shape, and that you polish yourself. Suppose all that. What then? Where shall we go?
I don't know, somewhere. I'll have to think.
Pardon me,
said the TV, turning off its gardening show.
But didn't I hear you say something about a pirate?
Yes, said the sewing machine nervously. What pirate did you mean? There's not a pirate in this building, I hope. Never fear, we don't have to worry any more about him. He captured us, but we escaped from him. Would you like to know how?
Oh, goodness, yes,
said the TV.
I love a good story.
So all the appliances gathered in a circle about the toaster, which began to tell the story of their adventures from the moment they had decided to leave the cottage till the moment they arrived at the door of the apartment. It was a very long story, as you know, and while the toaster told it, the sewing machine set to work sewing up all the rips and tears in the blanket. The next afternoon, when the blanket came home from Jiffy Dry Cleaners on the other side of Newton Avenue, the apartment's appliances put on a splendid party for their 5 visitors. The Christmas tree lights strung themselves up between the 2 ginger jar lamps and winked and bubbled in the merriest way, while the TV and the stereo sang duets from all the most famous musical comedies. The toaster was polished to a fare thee well, and the Hoover was likewise in fine fettle once again. But most wonderful of all, the blanket looked almost as good as new. Its yellow was possibly not as bright as it had been, but it was a lovely yellow for that. The exact same yellow, according to the TV, of custard and primroses and the nicest bathroom tissues. The exact same yellow, according to the TV, of custard and primroses and the nicest bathroom tissues. At 5 o'clock, the radio's alarm went off, and everyone became very still, except for the blanket, which went on whirling gaily about the living room for some time before it realized the music had stopped. What is it? Asked the blanket. Why are you all so quiet?
Hush,
said the radio.
It's time for the swap shop.
What is the swap shop? Asked the blanket. It's the program on listener-supported radio station, K-Hop, said the toaster excitedly. That is going to find a new home for us. I told you not to worry, didn't I? I told you I'd think of something.
Oh, be quiet,
said the lamp.
It's starting.
The radio turned up its volume so that all the appliances in the living room could hear.
Good afternoon,
It said in a deep announcer-type voice.
and welcome to The Swap Shop. Today's program opens with a very strange offering from Newton Avenue. It seems that someone there wants to swap. Now listen to this. A Hoover vacuum cleaner, an AM alarm clock radio, a yellow electric blanket, a tensor lamp, and a sunbeam toaster. All this in exchange for... well, it says here on the card here, you name it. What's most important, I'm informed, is that you should have a real and genuine need for all 5 of these appliances, since their present owner wants them to be able to stay together. For sentimental reasons. Now I've heard everything. Anyhow, if you think you need those 5 appliances, the number to call is KL5-9120. That number again, KL5-9120. Our next offer is not quite so unusual. Seems there's a party on Center Street who's offering absolutely for free 5 lovable black and white.
The radio turned off K-Hop.
Didn't he make us sound super?
It exclaimed, forgetting in its excitement to stop speaking in the announcer's voice.
Come over here by the telephone.
The Hoover urged the radio.
You'll have to talk to them. I'm just too nervous.
All 5 appliances gathered about the phone and waited for it to ring. There are 2 schools of thought about whether or not appliances ought to be allowed the free use of telephones. Some insist that it's flatly against the rules and should never be done in any circumstances, while others maintain that it's all right since there's only another appliance one is talking to. In this case, a telephone, whether or not it's against the rules, it is certainly a fact that a good many appliances, lonely radios especially, do use the phone system regularly, usually to contact other appliances. This explains the great number of so-called wrong numbers that people get at odd times. Computerized exchanges could never make up so many mistakes, though they end up taking the blame. For the last 3 years, of course, this issue had not mattered very much to the appliances since the phone in the cottage had been disconnected. Ordinarily, the Hoover would probably have opposed the notion of any of them using the phone, as it did tend to adopt the conservative attitude. But first there had been the absolute necessity of calling Jiffy Dry Cleaners and having them pick up the blanket, and that had established a clear precedent for their phoning into K-Hop and offering themselves on the swap shop. And now they were all gathered around the telephone waiting to talk with their next master. The phone rang.
Now, whatever you do,
warned the Hoover.
don't say yes to the first person who happens to call. Find out something about him first. We don't want to go just anywhere, you know.
Right,
said the radio. And remember, said the toaster, to be nice. The radio nodded. It picked up the telephone receiver.
Hello?
It said, Is this the person with the 5 appliances?
It is! Oh my goodness, yes indeed it is!
And so the 5 appliances went to live with their new mistress, for as it happened, it was a woman who'd phoned them first and not a man. She was an elderly, impoverished ballerina who lived all alone in a small room in the back of a ballet studio on Center Street, in the oldest part of the city. What the ballerina had swapped for the appliances were her 5 lovable black and white kittens. The appliance's former master never could figure out how, upon returning with his wife from their summer vacation by the sea, that there had come to be 5 kittens in their apartment. It was rather an awkward situation, for his wife was allergic to cat fur, but they were such darlings it would never have done to put them out on the street. In the end, they decided to keep them, and his wife simply took more antihistamines. And the appliances? Oh, they were very happy. At first, the Hoover had been doubtful about entering service with a woman, for it had never worked for a woman before, and it was somewhat set in its ways. But as soon as it realized what a fastidious and immaculate housekeeper its mistress was, it forgot all its reservations and became her greatest champion. It felt so good to be useful again. The radio would play beautiful classical music for the ballerina to dance to, and when she became tired and wanted to sit down and read, the lamp would light her book. And then, when it grew late and she had finished her book, the blanket would give off a steady, gentle warmth that kept her cozy all through the long, cold night. And when it was morning and she woke, what wonderful slices of toast the toaster could toast for her. So brown and crisp and perfect and always just the same. And so the 5 appliances lived and worked happy and fulfilled, serving their dear mistress and enjoying each other's companionship to the end of their days.